Good morning, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Nazir, and I'm working as coordinator with Energy Evaluation Asia Pacific. We are starting the webinar officially, so thank you again and welcome. This webinar is being organized by Energy Evaluation Asia Pacific, as you can see, focusing on the evaluation of energy policies and programs in India. Before I hand it over to our moderator for today's webinar, I would like to share with you some quick housekeeping rules for the session. So as you can see, the session is being recorded, and we assume that by attending and participating in this webinar, you give your consent. I would like to request you all to keep your microphones muted if you're not speaking, but you can switch on your cameras for engagement. Please use the chat box for questions. The speakers may respond to you directly in the chat box, or we can take the questions at the end of the presentations or in the question and answer session. This session will be uploaded in our YouTube channel, but it will also be available on our website. So feel free to check our YouTube channel and as well as the website. But we will also be sharing with you the session notes through website, but as well as to those who have registered for the sessions. I would also like to request your feedback at the end of the session. We will be sharing a link to the feedback questionnaire in the chat box so that it will help us improve our sessions in the future, but as well as find out what you like us to do more. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Edward, our moderator for today. Ed, over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to start sharing my screen, I think. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Ed, we can see it.
Great. I want to thank everyone who's participating, the presenters. We have a really distinguished field of presenters, and this is a really important area for energy evaluation in Asia Pacific. We try to inform our colleagues around the world about evaluation activities in all the different countries in the Asia Pacific region. And India, of course, is one of the biggest ones in terms of energy consumption. And it's also one of the most active in the energy efficiency and renewable energy field. There's a lot of activity going on. They have very high goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So people around the world would be looking and are looking at India and seeing what they're doing. So we felt important to have some presentations on what's going on. And I'm not going to talk any more about India. I do want to talk about EEAP, which was established now over 5 years ago. And its mission is to take a leadership role in expanding the practice of and capacity for what we call objective evaluation in both the energy efficiency, renewable energy program, and policy arena. And we do this by having workshops, conferences, websites, webinars such as this to foster the development of self-sustaining evaluation communities. We've already have a group in Indonesia that's established an evaluation association for Indonesia. We hope other countries in the Asia Pacific region do something similar. And we have a group of people, a steering committee of 9 members, an advisory committee of 25 members. And I encourage all of you who don't know about EEAP to go to our website, and you'll learn more about the people participating and what's coming up and what has been done. We have newsletters as well. Let's see. We do have some upcoming webinars I want to make sure people are aware of. They're not all finalized or all in process, but we hope to do something similar to what we're doing tonight, to look at the energy programs in Australia and Chile and New Zealand, and then a broader one on Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which for those not familiar, it's really looking at affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And it turns out we may actually have 2 sessions. We have a number of presenters for that. So we may break it out instead of one long one, say a couple, 2 one-hour ones over the next few months. And then the last one, we really are working on a measurement, evaluation, learning. So if we do evaluations, how do people learn from the findings, both from the evaluators themselves, but also from the implementers, policymakers, and funders. And then, as Nazir mentioned, and we'll see this again, we really encourage getting feedback from you. And there is a form, and he'll share the link later. So I'm going to get off my slides here and then return to Nazir, and he'll show us the agenda. And then I'll briefly introduce the presenters. And I'll do that one at a time. And then again, if you have questions, what we're trying to do is hold the questions till the end of the session, so everyone will have an opportunity to ask either of all the presenters or a single one. If there's something for clarification, again, use the chat button, and then Nazir will be looking at those, and if there's something that needs our attention before we go to the next presenter, then we can address that as well. And we do have, let's see, I have long bios for people, and I'm not going to do that. I have short bios. So the first presenter will be Balawant Joshi, and he has an extensive experience. I'm sure many people on the webinar have either known him personally or have heard of him, but has been involved in many different activities, both in India and internationally. And particularly, he's been working in the renewable energy sector for more than 20 years and involved in several landmark initiatives in this sector, including the feed-in tariff. And in the energy efficiency field, he's been active as well, particularly with the International Energy Agency and their DSM implementing agreement, where he managed several tasks as one of the operating agents, which I did actually for the first task under the IEA one, which was on evaluation. So it's good to have him on board. And I think without further ado, I'll let him take over, and he'll use his slides and begin his presentation. Balawant.
Hi, thanks a lot, Ed, for this introduction. I will be sharing my presentation, and how much time do I have, Ed, Nazir?
I'd like to give each presenter between 12 and 15 minutes if possible, so we have time at the end for the Q&A.
Certainly, I will try to finish between 12-13 minutes. Of course, as my fellow colleagues on the panel, and the people who are there in audience, that evaluation is not such a evolved practice in India. So evaluation of any policy is rarely done formally. While there has been recent change in the MNRE policy in this regard, and I have seen couple of tenders, couple of RFPs with regard to the evaluation of some of the policies, and that's a welcome change. But generally, what we see is that very rarely the policy is evaluated in a very objective manner. So we don't see a lot of literature in this regard available in the country. We have carried out evaluation once in a while, either for the clients or for internal purposes, and I would share one particular thing over here. But before getting into the core presentation, as Ed mentioned, I have been involved into renewable energy efficiency for more than 2 decades. My company, Idam Infrastructure Advisory, you can see logos, and we operate 3 verticals: management consulting, IT consulting solutions, and geospatial data management solution. We are dedicated to reducing carbon. So our tagline is enabling carbon minimal work. And as a result, we work only in those areas where there is a potential or ability to reduce the carbon. Our logo, quickly, if you see, there is Earth at the center, and then there are 5 small circles, which we say represent 5 basic elements: air, fire, water, earth, and space. Essentially, according to the Hindu philosophy, the entire universe is made up of these 5 basic elements, and green fins represents churning. And what we say is that despite the churning, despite the the changes that are taking place, we need to keep this earth stable or sustainable. And that's the meaning of the word Idam. That's the Idam. If I literally translate into English, it would mean this or it. So this is the earth that we need to keep stable or sustainable. As I said, we operate three verticals: Guru, which is IT, Idam, that is a management consulting, and Enfraji, that is into geospatial. I will not take you through the client list, but when the presentation would be shared, you may like to go through it. We work with large number of clients, even though we are a small boutique consulting firm from India. Renewable energy in India, it's considered as one of the success stories, and rightly so. We have got a huge amount of capacity that has got added last 7-8 years. Today, we have a capacity of 177 gigawatt. Out of that, solar takes a lion's share in terms of capacity addition in last 7-8 years. That's a 71 gigawatt. If you look at the standing of India, it's fourth globally in terms of the total RE capacity, also on the wind as well as on the solar solar capacity in the country. If we see solar, which grew massively over a period of last 9 years, nearly 27 times from 2.6 gigawatt, very small capacity which existed as on 31st March 2014 to we see as a 71 gigawatt, that is 2023. Overall, the share of the renewable energy in the system has also increased significantly, which now is close to 20%. But I will come to the issues or challenges with respect to that in a bit. Originally I thought of taking through the multiple renewable energy policies, but then I realized the subject is too vast and can't really do justice even to take you through all the policies. So I'm going to concentrate only on one policy, and then its implications for the subsequent policy making in the country. So the biggest policy reform which took place in India in 2003 was the Electricity Act, and which for the first time considered renewable energy as a specific energy resource, and then had specific provisions with respect to the feed-in tariff, renewable purchase obligations, connectivity related to the issues, and specific powers given to the state regulators and the central regulator to promote renewable energy. Several activities or several promotional measures were done from 2003 to 2015, but I think the biggest or the game changer for the renewable energy was the Paris Agreement, wherein the government of India committed to implement or to develop a renewable energy capacity of 175 gigawatt by 2022. And this is what I'm going to talk about in this presentation. What is the status today? What are the shortfalls? Where did it fail? How did and what probably the government is trying to do to kind of address those particular failures. So in the Paris Agreement, government committed not only 175 gigawatt 2022, but also it committed to reduce the carbon intensity by 33-35% by 2030 over 2005 levels. Coming back to 175 gigawatt target, the 175 gigawatt target was divided between 100 gigawatt of solar, 60 gigawatt of wind, biopower of around 10 gigawatt, and a small hydro of around 5 gigawatt. So that constituted 175 gigawatt of solar or renewable energy capacity. In India, we have a little peculiar situation wherein the Ministry of Power, we have got two ministries which deal with renewable energy and power. So the power related issues are dealt by two ministries. Core power sector is dealt by Ministry of Power, and the renewable energy is dealt by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. And we had an issue with, because the large hydro capacity, anything about 25 megawatt was being considered as a part of by the Ministry of Power and was never part of the renewable energy till recently. So the government has changed the definition in line with the international practice, and now we consider or now we treat large hydro also as a part of renewable energy. But this particular discussion that we are going to have is only about 175 gigawatt target, which didn't include large hydro. And that's the reason you would see small hydro capacity target of 5 gigawatt and achievement of 4.9. Biopower, I'm going from the bottom up. On the right-hand side graph, the biopower, the achievement is more than what originally target was. The target was 10 gigawatt, capacity installed is 10.7 gigawatt. And then we move to the big ones, the wind. again, 60 gigawatt target is 60 gigawatt target achievement is only 42 gigawatt. And in case of solar, against the target of 100 gigawatt achievement is 62 gigawatt. So what went wrong? The left-hand side graph actually gives only the information about the year-on-year capacity addition. So I'm not going to dwell into it. It will take too much of time. So I will straight away move into the what went wrong and what needed to be done. So if you see if you do the analysis of 175 gigawatt capacity addition and at the states and their achievements. So if you see the states which achieved less than 50% of the target given to the state, and you will see many large states in the country. Maharashtra is the largest in terms of the GDP and the energy consumption. Uttar Pradesh is also significantly, it's the third largest today after Tamil Nadu. So Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, AP, Punjab, Haryana, all of them didn't achieve even 50% of the target. More than 50% were achieved by Uttarakhand, Sikkim, slightly less than 100% were Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and close to 100 or more than 100% were Telangana, Rajasthan, Karnataka, Andaman and Nicobar. Out of that, really the heavyweight state is Karnataka over here, which has got a huge consumption of its own. So the capacity shortage, if you see, large number of states or many big states had a huge capacity shortage, and that caused really the shortage in terms of the achieving the 175 gigawatt target. If you see at the same time, out of 36 states and union territories in the country, 13 states and union territories had very near zero RE capacity addition in the last 6 months, and that shows the kind of commitment the states had to the RE capacity addition target. And this has actually kind of impacted, and this issue really need to be addressed moving forward if we have to achieve the national targets. This is again the status of RPO compliance, and which reflects essentially the capacity addition that has been achieved. I will not take you through these slides. I have kept a few slides in the presentation so that whosoever wants to go through it later on would have a full information and will not be really searching for the specific piece of information. So what are the primary reasons for shortfall in the RE capacity addition? If you see, the couple of states, Rajasthan, Gujarat, really took lead in terms of the capacity addition. All other states combined even in the last 6 months or last 7-8 months, we have seen the capacity addition by the only few states has been really massive. And the other states are really lagging. And that's very obvious. And what matters over here is the ambition of the state and not really the RE potential. What has been seen by way of recent wind potential assessment that has been done at 150 meter hub height shows the potential of more than 1,000 gigawatt that exists in the country, which is huge as compared to the existing capacity of only 42, 43 gigawatt that we have in the country. Similarly, solar, as far as the solar is concerned, the capacity, the potential assessment has been done long time back, 2006, 2007, which shows around 750, 760 gigawatt of potential as compared to what we have today, around 73 gigawatt of installed capacity. So what were the challenges? What we believe is that each major sector has its own challenge. Utility scale solar, which has got the maximum achievement. I will come to the slide, subsequent slide. Out of 60 gigawatt target that was given to the utility scale solar, it achieved close to more than 50 gigawatt of capacity addition. Rooftop solar was essentially really the laid down in terms of the solar capacity addition. What we have seen in other countries, Western countries, the rooftop solar has taken lead over the utility scale solar. What we saw in India is exactly opposite. And the reasons are not difficult to fathom. The government of India's policies, creation of SECI, creating a model which would reduce the risk for the project developer has resulted in the reduced risk to the developer. It has resulted into the lower cost to the country. But the rooftop solar being distributed and being within the state domain has seen wide gamut of policies and also DISCOM resistance in different forms. And as a result of that, against the 40 gigawatt of target, what we see even today it's around 8.5 gigawatt of capacity addition that has taken place. So out of 100 gigawatt of solar, what we see, only and 40 gigawatt out of 100 gigawatt, 40 gigawatt was a target for rooftop. Then that actually failed to achieve badly. Wind, it had its own challenge. The mechanism which worked extremely well of reverse auction for solar didn't work well for wind. The industry structure, the way the business is set up in India is responsible for that. It also resulted into the abnormally low prices at some point of time, which were unviable, and as a result of that, projects didn't take off. Even though the government of India tried to do the auctions in a big way. The other issues which government faced, issues with respect to the land acquisition, as well as the transmission infrastructure. Aggressive bidding by several developers resulted in unviable prices, winner's curse. What we see that the several projects were wound up. The project developers have given up on their bank guarantees given to SECI for the project development. Also, one important reason is the policy flip-flop on the imported panels. So there were levies which were for the import of the panel, that is basic customs duty, countervailing duty, and which resulted in increase in prices. But more than increase in prices, I think the increase in price is not that big an issue. The issue was the time lost in getting the regulatory approvals for inclusion of those costs into the tariffs. So the last slide on terms of analysis, wide variation in the state achievements, and that's a reflection of the RPO achievement. There is a big issue over here. The state RPOs are set by the state regulator, while the RPOs were set by the Ministry of Power, and the slide which I showed earlier were more a kind of a guidance. Not many states incorporated those RPOs, and even if those RPOs were incorporated, not really insisted on compliance. So state targets at variance from national, this is the big issue and which need to be addressed moving forward. Variations in the state regulation, this is very important for the rooftop solar. The sector has failed to take off and need to be something needs to be done. Something radical needs to be done to ensure that the sector takes off. Unintended consequences of incentives. While the government of India offered an incentive in terms of the transmission waiver for all projects connected to the interstate transmission system, it resulted in the lopsided development. Most of the developers started rushing towards the areas with a good resource, something like Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat. But as a result of that, resource-rich states started imposing constraints on land and infra. We saw that in Gujarat, we saw that in Rajasthan, and it also would result over a period of time in increased transmission cost. Unsuitable procurement mechanism, like, one size fits all can't really work in the sector. So the renewable energy, if depending on the resource, type of the resource, nature of the project, business model, need to have a different mechanisms. So we can't really work on the same mechanism for the utility scale solar, wind development, rooftop solar, that may be done in a differently. Having said that, I have got just 2 slides. I think I have already done 12 minutes, but I will just take 2 slides. India has now committed to the target of 500 gigawatt of RE by 2030 and net zero by 2070. And what we see is that the government of India is implementing plethora of policies. Policy panorama I have given a title. And I have divided the policies into 3: deployment-related policies, manufacturing-related policies, and operational-related policies. And a lot of the lacuna that I discussed in terms of when 175 gigawatt was being implemented, there is an attempt to at least take care of that. There is a clarity in terms of the manufacturing that needs to be done in India, and there is a specific scheme to promote manufacturing. There are RPO targets, renewable generation obligation targets, capacity targets. So the different instruments are being deployed to ensure that the capacity addition would take place. But even
Balawant,
then,
we need to finish up.
Yes, last slide. So I will leave these slides for you to go through it. What needs to be done, and over here, so 3-4 points. The consistency of policies and regulation across states and centralization of rules. India is a federal state, and this is something which would be considered as anathema by some, but that is something needed. Improvement in financial health of DISCOMs, cheap and quick long duration as well as diurnal storage. compliance mechanism. Land reforms is, I think, one of the biggest thing moving forward because RE is a land intensive, and a stronger power market that needs to be established to actually accommodate different types of RE resources and excess RE resources that are available. So thank you very much. I will stop over here, but we'll be happy to take questions later.
Thank you very much. That was very informative. And in fact, it resonates with the US experience with all our different states and how each state varies and how they implement and evaluate as well. So not so different than in India, just so. Due to time, I'd like to go to our next speaker. And let's see, here we go. Soumya Prasad Garnaik. Again, a person with many years of experience in his career, and in particular, he was executive director in energy efficiency services in the Ministry of Power, where he led many of the energy efficiency portfolios with many different projects. And as director in the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, he managed the flagship programs like Perform, Achieve, and Trade, PAT, P-A-T, and the Standard and Labeling Program in India. I think I'll stop here and I'll let him start his presentation. Soumya.
Thank you, Ed. So for your kind introduction. So give me a moment just to share my screen here. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This is Soumya from New Delhi. The first presentation we saw from the supply side intervention and how India is doing since last few years from the renewable energy side as a capacity addition to the entire power sector fleet. I'm just jumping into the other side of this. This is the demand side management program, a very flagship program of Government of India, which was quietly announced during the 2012 April 1st. The idea here is that how to bring the energy intensive industrial sector to become energy efficient. So the presentation is all about that. But before I go into the details of the evaluation of this scheme, which is this program, which is unique in the world. So let me just give you a brief story, tell you a brief story about the energy efficiency transition in the country. And what we could see that the Energy Conservation Act, the only regulatory mechanism which came in the year 2001, actually it was enforced in 2002, and there were certain institutional mechanism in the form of Bureau of Energy Efficiency formed at the national level. Subsequently, state designated agencies or the extended arm of BEE was established in various states to take care of the provisions of the Energy Conservation Act. So very objective of this act was how to make the uses of the energy, whether it is fossil fuel, whether it is primary energy, whether it is secondary energy, more optimally used, and how to generate the awareness among the various mass to use the energy in a more appropriate manner, thereby contributing to the country's carbon emission footprint in a negative manner. So launch of the energy efficiency programs typically started from 2006-2007, but nothing happened till the year 2008, when the National Action Plan on climate change came into come to the table. And in the National Action Plan of the climate change, Prime Minister Action Plan, so there are 8 missions under that plan, and one of the major important mission was the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency. So in short, it's called NMEEE, and this was typically focused to accelerate the energy conservation aspect, energy efficiency aspect in the various sectors of economy. So there was certain amendment to the act was required, that was in 2010, particularly the provision of the compliance penalty provisions and certain kind of mandatory inclusion of the things that came in the form of this amendment. So a couple of programs that were very, very important in that context. One was the standard and labeling program, bringing few of the appliances into the mandatory regime so that you have the minimum energy performance standard in place. But the most important one, in my view, is the putting some standards and norms for the energy consumption for the energy intensive industries. So in this way, what we could have seen that the higher impact of the energy intensity, that's the energy consumption per unit of GDP, that was recorded, monitored, and we see that there is a decline in this, and roughly about 1% to 1.2% of the this energy intensity has seen a downfall since last 10-12 years, which is a very welcome state. So you all know about this COP26 announcement of the India's plan towards by 2030 and the path towards the net zero by 2070. The third point, if you just see, reduce the carbon emissions by 1 billion tons from now to 2030, as well as the carbon intensity by 45%. So let me just talk about this scheme, the PAT scheme. As the name suggests, it is a perform, achieve, and trade program of India, and this is something. It's a market-based regulatory mechanism under the Energy Conservation Act. If you just see, the Act talks about many things, but one of the things is the norms for the energy-intensive industries. So here the point comes, what are these energy intensive industries and how do they really contribute to the energy consumption, as well as if at all some actions are taken, how it will result in the reduction in the CO2 emission reduction, as well as make competitive to this sector. And if we see, more than 850 million tons of oil equivalent energy is consumed, 35 to 40% goes to the industrial sector, manufacturing sector. And so it makes sense that some kind of interventions to be taken in this sector. So fortunately, this act also has that provision to bring this particular sector under a mandatory regime, which is a very welcome step as per my observation. So what it says that there is the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, the regulatory institution that can establish the norms, standards, direct to the industries to comply to the standards, and in lieu of that, provide some kind of energy saving certificates who overachieve the targets, and the energy saving certificate can be tradable as an asset. And if the penalty, if there is a penalty and enforcement mechanism for the non-compliance, and there is also adjudication mechanism to take care of the complaints and all these things. So what we see that the expectation from this program was, and it came in a cycle. In the first cycle, it was seen that to unlock the energy efficiency market to the tune of $5 billion at that point of time. I'm talking about this in 2015. Now the number has gone up. And second important thing is that establish the energy management system in the industries. Earlier, it was very, very less. And in this process, the data capturing, the data monitoring, the quality and quantity of the data acquisition, that was actually very important for the industrial sector to have, and that in this scheme that was established. The skill development and creation of the employment opportunity, because this is a massive program, so it requires some kind of skill set, a cadre of professionals who can take care of the lot of things like the baseline estimation, doing some kind of helping the industry to prepare their action plans, even bringing the linking to the financing institutions to implement the projects, as well as finally the verification, the monitoring and verifications and all. Apart from that, there in the entire ecosystem, there are technology providers involved, there are financial institutions involved. So it created an employment opportunity overall, and create a conducive environment for the competitive maker, because finally it is reducing the energy consumption or the specific energy consumption of the industry, so thereby making it competitive. This slide talks about the uniqueness of this particular program. And as I was involved initially in designing of the programs between 2010 to 2012 and 2013, of course, So what it requires is a very unique concept of the gate-to-gate concept in the industries. And so all the industry which takes about different forms of energy, whether it is electricity, fuel oil, natural gas, coal, everything, depending whatever is required for its process. So that was actually converted to a single unit in terms of tons of oil equivalent. And that unit, that particular thing, I mean, the energy is used to produce the product. So it is actually from a gate-to-gate concept, the ACC was established by taking the last 3 years data, and so this concept was developed. So in this PAT scheme, what we see is because once you give the target, the industry may not achieve the target overnight or in a year. So they require preparation, they require their planning, they require procurement, they require implementation. So that is why a 3 years target, a 3 years cycle or window was given to them to do the things. So that means the target was given in the year 1, and at the end of the year 3, the verification will occur, and then it is seen that whether the industry has achieved the target or not. Now, the beauty of this particular scheme here is that when we go to any of the industrial sectors, say pulp and paper sector, which has say about 30-31 industries, and these 30-31 industries are very unique of itself. So you cannot give a single target to these individual industries there. So here the idea was that the lesser targets should be given to the industries who are already doing better, and the higher target will be given to the industries who are not doing good. That means more potential is there. So it is a relative ACC concept, relative specific energy consumption concept that was developed with a suitable methodology. And to do that, Bureau of Energy Efficiency went through a consultative process, which is very good. And to do that, there is a regulatory provision which gives the power, authority to Bureau of Energy Efficiency to do that. So the target and compliance mechanism, and because it is a very specific nature, the industries, the technicalities are involved, technical committees were formed. So, the people from different groups that was called, and sector-specific technical committees were formed to deliberate and come out with a consensus, which is very good. And this also allows under the Section 8 of the Energy Conservation Act. And more importantly, once we do all these things, whether it's baseline, whether it's monitoring and verification, these are to be done by the independent verifiers. And fortunately, there was a cadre of professionals created already in India in the form of certified energy auditors. And those cadre of professionals were used in this particular scheme. So there is a complete linkage of another scheme of the program, scheme of Government of India to this program. So if you just see very basic things, but it looks very simple, but it has gone to a very rigorous exercise and all, like which industries to be taken. We call it a DC, or the designated consumers, but the designated consumers definitions are there under the Energy Conservation Act, which actually tells that if an industry consumes certain energy with over a threshold limit, that will be called as a designated consumer. So the designated consumer comes with the absolute energy consumption in a year. And in that designated consumer, it automatically falls to comply to the PAT requirement. So in this PAT requirement, what is happening here is, once that DC is notified or identified as per the law, then you have to establish a baseline. And the baseline is established with certain kind of standardized methodology and all. Then set the targets for the ACC reduction within a period of 3 years. And the industry is given the 3 years time to achieve the target. And to achieve the target, the industry has to invest, or they may have to, bring new technology, improve their energy efficiency, energy management practices, etc., etc. And then if the industry achieves the target within the 3 years, that is fine. If they overachieve it, the extra achievement will be regarded as a energy saving certificate, which can be traded. And the underachievers have to do two things. Either they have to purchase the shortfall of their certificate, shortfall of their amount from the certificate, from the market, who have overachieved it, and or pay the penalty if they are not able to do that. So it is a massive exercise if you just see to do this. Who is managing this, registry? Who is doing this market mechanisms, market controlling, and all? All these things were there. So from 2012 to 2015, actually, I can say it's a learning phase. And so the institutions were involved from BEE. There were state designated agencies. They have their own rules and responsibilities. There are designated energy auditors. They have their own rules and responsibility. The designated consumer have to do certain things. So all in the entire ecosystem, all these entities were brought in to discharge their responsibility to a certain extent. But yes, it looks very fancy that everything has been done. But the idea here is that in that process, all these the responsibilities, the actions, the activities were not up to the mark in the first cycle, which was tried to plug in the subsequent cycles after 2015. So overall, if you just see about 1,333 DCs are right now there, and there are certain criteria Bureau has also stipulated how these DCs are selected as per the Act. And if you just see the list of the industries and all that are there, and the technology or the targets are typically given in a certain things which in the background. One is that it is the designated consumer should be listed in the Energy Conservation Act. Intensity or quantity of the energy consumed, amount of investment needed, capacity to invest, availability of the energy efficient technology. So what does it mean is that there is a massive background work required to go about that. And I am thankful to Bureau of Energy Efficiency that such kind of things have gone into while setting up the target. So in the first cycle achievement, what we could see that if you just see the formal,
we need to sort of finish up. So
sure. So in the achievement, if you just see in the first cycle, we have 6.68 tons of oil equivalent. That was the target, but 8.67 was achieved subsequently. So that means it seems that it is overachieved. And the 67% of the designated consumers feel that the target is stringent for a 3 years compliance period, but 74% DCs have exceeded the target. So that means it looks like that the target was, kind of a lenient target was there. And there are certain driving factor of the DCs that was there, but most important thing is the good action plan and regulatory compulsion. These were the two driving factors which made these DCs to comply to that target. So this two slides talks about what are the achievements. If you just see the savings and investments in the past cycle, about 1.4 billion USD that was saved in lieu of roughly $4 billion US as the investment. So roughly the payback period of about 3 years. Similarly, the other attributes are there in the subsequent cycle, in the second cycle and all. It's going in a much better way. So I'll just have a couple of slides, just will not take more than a minute time. But some observations after is that, what is the overall consultations, what is the feedback for the baseline energy audits, what are the target setting methodology. So this was an exercise we did. I was involved by taking the feedback from the designated consumers through a survey to evaluate this particular thing, and which is self-explanatory. So some observations are there also from the action taken by the designated consumers and what they have done. They have made investments. 42% said invested and took benefit. Normalization factor, that is actually some adjustments to be done in the verification time or that the compliance period. And if you just see some cross-cutting technology, waste heat recovery, fuel saved, increase in capacity utilization, these are the things which were taken forward. So this is my last slide. The success and concern, if you just see, the PAT scheme has shown a different direction to the Indian industry. The change in the management outlook towards energy efficiency, proactive investment in energy efficiency measures, the new technology interventions, data monitoring and accounting, which has actually created the transparency in the entire energy management system, and engagement of the cadre of professionals in the form of certified energy auditors and managers. And the concerns are the scheme administration facilitation, because it's a massive scheme. India is a very big country, and managing this program from Bureau of Energy Efficiency at a single location does not actually. The data quality has been a concern, and till the monitoring and if things are not improved, it will remain as a concern for the data quality. The methodology, the complexity is there. It has to be more and more simplified. Verifiers, the quality and quantity of the verifiers for the monitoring and verification is extremely important once we go ahead in the subsequent cycle. And the prediction of the ESERT's quantity and price, because that actually gives the indication for the industries or the DCs what to do, what not to do, because that actually creates, because it's a tradable mechanism, so that actually creates a very good indication for the. So Bureau of Energy Efficiency should look into these factors when we go ahead into the next cycles and all. But overall, this scheme has been a game changer in the entire energy management scenario of the country. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity. Look forward to your questions if you have.
Thank you. That was excellent. We need another hour just to focus on your last 4 slides or so. A lot to talk about, but a very comprehensive program. You learned a lot, I can tell. So since time is short, without further ado, we'll go to our next speaker. And right here, Aditya Chunekar. He has been working on understanding the factors driving India's energy demand and exploring ways to meet it sustainably through improved energy efficiency and adoption of a demand-side management. His focus is on residential, industrial, and the building sector, and he's also worked on issues related to the quality of supply, smart metering, and energy access. So Aditya, why don't you take it away? And
Thanks.
again,
Yes.
for those who have questions, please use the chat. Go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And in the screen. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see this webinar on evaluation, and I really commend and appreciate EEAP's work on this. Very critical but often neglected topic. As in, we like to announce big, bold initiatives, but looking back at how things have worked or what things have not worked, that's not so attractive. So good work, EEAP. I'll focus on evaluation of energy efficiency programs and policies in India. I work with Prayas Energy Group. It's an organization based in Pune city in the state of Maharashtra in India. And we have been working for last almost 30 years on various aspects related to the electricity sector and by extension, the energy sector. And most of our work is in most of our outputs are in form of publications, and they are available on our website. So what I'll do is I'll focus on rather than focusing on a specific program or a policy, what I'll do is I'll talk briefly about the broader policy, regulatory, and institutional structure in which energy efficiency policies and programs work in India. And in that context, how evaluations also work. Some part of it was covered by Mr. Garnaik, so I won't repeat that part, but I'll highlight some parts which are important to the discussion today. So the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, or BEE, it is the nodal agency for energy efficiency and conservation policies, and it was established in 2002 under the Energy Conservation Act. And now, one thing to note is it is housed under the Ministry of Power. So although it looks at the broader energy sector, it has its focus more on the electricity sector. And one other thing is, the key responsibilities that BE has, it notifies energy efficiency standards for appliance, equipment, and processes at national level. And one thing that can be or one thing to note is that states in India under the Energy Conservation Act, they do not have the authority to come up with standards for specific appliances and equipment and even processes. They do have the authority to come up with standards for buildings, because that is more climate specific, but all the standards are set at national level by BE, and therefore that takes the most important that's the most important responsibility of BE. And then as Mr. Garnaik talked about the designated consumers and the perform, achieve, and trade program, that's another part. And then BE also is responsible for creating a cadre of energy auditors and managers. And if you look at BE, they do a lot of stuff, lot of programs they have. But the standards and labeling program and the PAT program, those are the two key programs, and they account for almost 91% of the total savings achieved by all the programs. And just to put things in perspective, so BE's budget outlay for, let's say, FY 21-22 was just about 155 crores rupees, or about $19 million, which is significantly moderate, I would say. As in the Ministry of Power, its home ministry has a budget of 48,000 crores, about $5.5 billion. So this is less than 0.3% of it. So that's the budget that BE has for its energy efficiency portfolio, and therefore a substantially smaller part of it goes to energy efficiency evaluation. The other key sector is this Energy Efficiency Services Limited. It's a large public sector energy service company, and it's known for its Ujala LED bulbs program. And it has, over the last few years, it has specialized in the bulk procurement model, where you aggregate the demand, and then in that aggregation, you get discounts on the procurement price from the manufacturers, and then you pass it on to the consumers. I'll talk a little bit more about Ujala later. But BE and Energy Efficiency Services Limited, these are the two most important institutions that are driving most of the energy efficiency work in India. Now, there are also state designated agencies, and the state electricity regulatory commissions also come into picture. The reason being the way Energy Conservation Act was structured, which Mr. Garnaik also talked about. BE was in the role of coming up with these norms and regulations, but the compliance that was left to the state designated agencies and the state electricity regulatory commissions. And that has been the weak link so far in the compliance part of it. And then there are, of course, electricity distribution companies, which are called the DISCOMs. And they are supposed to come up with utility run DSM programs, demand side management programs. But very few DISCOMs do it. And even if they do, they work on minuscule budgets. So that's the broader context in which energy efficiency works. Now, if you look at the evaluation of BE policies and programs, so at a national level, the Energy Conservation Act itself does not mention evaluation. Focus is much more on monitoring, measurement, and verification. So Mr. Garnaik talked about PAT, but for standards and labeling, the focus is on whether an appliance which comes under a mandatory regime, whether all of them do carry the mandatory labels or not, or whether the energy performance of those labels are on par with the energy performance standards on the labels, the energy performance of the actual appliances. So that's the focus on. The focus on evaluation is limited. Having said that, BE does publish an annual report, which is titled Impact of Energy Efficiency Measures, and they have been doing so for last 10 years, 7-8 years at least. And if you look at that report in that last year, in 2021-22, about 44 million tons oil equivalent were the savings estimated by BE, which is about 6% of total primary energy supply, which is very, if you look at the amount of budget that BE has, it is substantially high, I would say. And 73% comes from PAT and 18% from SNL, and rest from the other programs. And now, on standards and labeling, the way these savings are measured, they are based on three things. One is the production data that manufacturers are required to submit to the BE under the EEAP, which there's certain level of confidence. But the two other factors is the baseline. So what would have been the counterfactual? If people bought energy efficient appliances, what would they have bought if the star labels were not there? So that's the baseline. And second is the usage hours. And a lot of assumptions are made in these two factors, and they significantly impact the total energy savings. So for example, in most of the cases, the baseline is considered to be the lowest efficiency available. So corresponding to 1 star, India has 1 star to 5 star, 5 star being most efficient. So that's the baseline assumption. Second is usage. Also, some one uniform number in most cases is considered for all the for the entire country. So for example, ceiling fans would be used for say 2000 hours per year or so, which may not be true. But these kind of assumptions are made, and in order to improve the accuracy, India does not have residential energy consumption survey. BE did do some, does come up with some market surveys, which are not public, but these assumptions are based on that. But an important thing to do to improve the accuracy of this would be to do those surveys. And then there is limited focus on the process evaluation and market effects of the standards and labeling program. For instance, well, BE has done a lot in improving the entire process of, let's say, application for standards and labeling, or data submission by the manufacturers, etc. But what exact impact the standards and labeling program has had on the overall market, or let's say the causality of the standards and labeling program to the penetration of different star labels models in the market, or even a fact that how the star labels are perceived by the consumers and how that impacts their decision makers, their decision making. So these kind of studies have received limited, if at all any, attention. Now, evaluation of EESL, because EESL has run this massive Ujala program, which was for LED bulbs and which transformed the LED market, the LED bulbs market in India. Prayas, we did an independent, I wouldn't say evaluation, because it was not, it was an exercise to understand what are the impacts of this program. And we focused on a few things, and I won't go into the details of all the study that we did. But the basic point was, Ujala program was a bulk procurement program. So EESL, it aggregated the demand and it placed orders with the LED manufacturers in batches. And at the end of the day, whatever discount that manufacturers gave to EESL, it was passed on to consumers. And very importantly, the entire retail chain was kind of put out of the program. So the markups attributed to the retail chain were not there. And therefore, they could achieve that price reduction, which was almost from 310 rupees per LED bulb to 38 rupees per LED bulb. And another important thing was there was a deemed savings approach was used, and there was no link to the payment. So everything was paid upfront, and that in a way was a substantial factor for the success of the program. So we did this evaluation of, well, let's say assessment of what was the impacts of the program through household survey, through retailer survey, through talking with manufacturers and industry experts, etc. And just two examples on why evaluation is important for programs like these. So one thing that we found was the failure rate of LED bulbs. Every bulb came with a 3-year warranty. Initially, it was 8 years, then it was reduced to 3 years. And although it came with a warranty, we did see some failure rate. In Puducherry, it was high. These were one of the 3 cities that we surveyed, whereas in Pune, it was low. But interestingly, the exchange rate of the failed bulbs under warranty was substantially low. So there was that part of the process which could have been improved. And the second part was also the baseline that you consider for estimating the savings. What we did find was that the LED bulbs were used to replace the CFLs more than the incandescent bulb, and therefore the quantum of savings estimated was substantially higher than what would have been actually received. So although the program had a significant transformational effect, the evaluation can come out with some process improvements which can be critical to improve the program further. Now I'm up with 12 minutes, so I'll use just 1 more minute to talk about the utility DSM programs. So the forum of, well, almost all the state regulatory commissions in India have issued regulations that utilities should conduct demand-side management programs. However, the follow-up of those regulations and those directives has been limited. And therefore, if you look at the current DSM scenario in India, you would find very few, if at all any, regulator-approved demand-side management programs run by utilities. So that's the status as of now. There are a lot of, there are a few pilots which happen usually through some bilateral funding or some other sources of funding, but nothing very limited regulator approved. And in that case, since there are no programs, the evaluation of those programs, even interestingly of the pilots, has been limited, because ideally it would have been good if evaluation would have been part of the program design of the pilots. To some extent it is, but from the point of what lessons can be drawn to scale it up, that part has been limited. And in fact, the regulations also require distribution companies to conduct EM and V, but the complementary guidelines that a regulator needs to issue, which guide distribution companies on how to conduct those EM and V, they are mostly absent from all the states. So that's where the utility DSM programs are. And on the very last slide, so what can be done? One thing is, there can be more program-related data in public domain. So data by Bureau of Energy Efficiency on, let's say, the production of star-labeled appliances, or if they are doing market research surveys, then putting those results out in the public domain, so that independent organizations like us or some academic institutions can do that evaluation. And then one important thing is, we do need a residential energy consumption survey. I mean, if you look at last 10 years, the residential sector has been the sector which has grown at almost 7% in India. So significant growth is expected. So it's important to know how people are using energy in their homes, and then what are the implications of different energy efficiency policies that BE or other institutions are conducting. And then one which is a very generic recommendation is that evaluation should be part of policy and program design, not only at the national level for BE and ESL, but also at the state level, where regulations are also given by SCRCs on both, one, to conduct DSM programs, and if you're conducting those DSM programs, then how to evaluate them. So in absence of these kind of specific mandates, so Balawant talk about mandates for renewable energy, and some of them would have worked, some of them would have not, but at least there is some impact, some change that happens through these kind of mandates. So a similar mandate is needed for demand side management as well as for evaluation of these programs. And that is where I would stop.
Thank you very much. That was great. In fact, those last 2 bullets, we could have another hour. We can talk about that. I mean, I fully support that. And I've learned a lot from each of the presenters today. It's I had a lot of, over the years, questions about different aspects of evaluation and the energy programs in India, and all 3 have filled in some of the blanks. And I can see there's still a lot of progress needs to be made, and I have a much better appreciation of how challenging and difficult it will be, particularly if you do it state by state or regulatory authority by regulatory authority. So I look forward to seeing how much progress gets made. And I think what we want to make sure for ending, I want to thank everyone who presented today. I want to thank the other participants who listened today. And we're going to have a a follow-up with this. We appreciate any feedback you can provide. There's a link in the chat that Nazir had sent out, and there'll be more information requested from you when we send the notice out about the recording that's available, and hopefully we can learn more. So I know it's evening here, but it's the beginning of the day there, and everyone needs to go to work. So I think rather than having a continue for another hour, we'll end here. I appreciate everyone's input, and I found it very fascinating. And most likely we'll have another webinar on see how much progress has been made. So thank you again, all. Nazir, did you have any concluding comments?
Thank you, Ed. No, I don't have. I just have also posted our LinkedIn page and as well as Twitter handle in the chat box. So please follow these 2 pages, but also you can check out the website where we have a number of resources related to both energy and as well as evaluation. And as Ed shared, there are some exciting webinars we are planning. So yeah, please stay tuned. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.